How does typing in your password make you vulnerable to phishing? When do you authenticate someone in the physical world? What questions should you be asking yourself more often? Hmm. Welcome back and thanks for tuning in. I'm Nick, and this is Super Simple Security Principles. Listen each week and learn how to protect yourself online no matter your skill level. This is episode 37, Phishing Protection. Be specifically suspicious. I love it. Joining us and instructing us, as always, our Master Guardian, Makane. Woo!
Hey Nick, I
Hey,
think that's
buddy.
my most ridiculous title yet.
Right?
Uh,
That's a good one. So, where are we going to start today? Apparently, typing my password makes me vulnerable to phishing.
yeah, so as usual, we will get to that question, but we're not going to follow that in terms of progression. Where I want to start actually is just a quick recap of episode 33. In there, we talked because we're going to be kind of building on some of the things we talked about there.
Yeah.
We talked about authentication,
Okay.
and we started to talk about how it works in the physical world, specifically with hotel key cards.
Right.
And the whole focus of that episode was on somebody authenticating us, right? We got to the hotel, we check our license, and then we use our hotel key card to authenticate us to the room. And today we're going to flip that around. And so we're going to be asking the question, when are we the ones doing the authenticating of someone else?
Hmm. Okay. Okay.
And we're
When
going to
are you who you say you are?
well, it's yeah. So normally, when I'm coming somewhere, I'm getting authenticated, right?
Okay. Right.
But when am I doing the one asking? When am I saying, "Show me your documents. Prove to me who you are"?
Gotcha. This is the prove it moment.
Yeah, right. And it's
Okay.
right. It was probably hard for you to even like get what I was saying because the whole point of this is that like we're going to start talking about the physical world, but it's not something we're used to doing, right? Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So here's the thing. And maybe this is just even more evidence of the real problem because I was thinking about where is that case reversed in the physical world? And I had time to think about it and I know you didn't. So it's kind of unfair anyway, but I had lots of time and I couldn't really come up with much. I came up with a tiny bit. But let me give you the examples and then maybe it'll be a little more clear what I'm even talking about because it's kind of strange.
Right.
So if someone comes to your home, Nick, and they want to come inside, what are you going to do? Like that you don't know, somebody you don't know, and they want to come inside your house.
I ask them who they are. That's what I'm gonna do.
Right. Exactly. And if even if they right, they're going to have to prove to you that they're someone they have some good reason who they are, why they have, right? You're going to so that's the main case that I could come up with where we are instead of being on the receiving end of the authentication in the physical world is we are doing the authenticating ourselves of somebody else.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. And so, and it's like in the movies, it's one of those stereotypical cases where they put on a uniform and be like, "Oh, there was a gas leak or something," and the people are like, "Oh yeah, come on in." Right? Their authentication is not very strong. I'm hoping that we would be a little more careful than that, right?
Right.
But the fact is, we don't really do that much in the physical world. And in most settings, aside from somebody wanting to come in your home, let's say you go to a store, you're not going to be like, "Does that cashier really work here?" Or right? I know it's silly, right? I mean, and even if you see some folks wandering around, if they had a uniform on for the store, or probably even just a name tag, we would probably just assume they're employees, right?
Right, right, right.
And even in situations where it's potentially more impactful to our lives, say we get pulled over by a cop while we're driving, are you going to ask him to prove his identity to you? Right. Not a
Um,
good idea, obviously.
no.
And the point of all these examples is authentication in the physical world is largely very one sided. Typically, it's only one party who cares about being sure of who the other one is for a variety of reasons, but either because there's so much obvious evidence, like you go into a store, or you just don't, or it just doesn't matter that much.
Right.
And so, as you know, there's organizations that we might be representing if we're working as a if we're a cop, when we don't want somebody to prove, or if we're at the airline, if we're work security at the airport, and we're the ones who people have to show their security to, we'd be doing authenticating. But that's when we're representing a business. As individuals, we rarely are doing any authentication in the physical world, right?
Right.
So, and this is one of the key points I want to emphasize here, because this reality conditions our mindset and our habits, I think, in a way that leaves us vulnerable online. Like we tend to think about it the same way as we do physically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so my question, now that we've kind of actually wrapped our heads around that notion, is, are there any ways, because it's not necessarily common online either, but um, are there any places that you can think of, just again, I know you haven't had any time to think about it, but where we should be authenticating somebody online, even though we don't do it physically much?
Online, yeah. Like, realistically, I just think about some of the places we go to shop, or to even, you know, oh, just search for things. You know, we tend to trust what we're being given, and I'm thinking of, yeah, I should probably do my due diligence, especially if I'm shopping on a website.
Yeah, yeah, shopping is certainly a big one. And it's something we'll talk about more, some very specific categories that I have in mind, and we'll probably do even some full episodes on that. But what I decided to for today is we'll just focus on one that I think it's one of the most important, but also one of the most overlooked. Um, in fact, I'd say it this way: I suspect it's one that most people never do at all.
Troy. All
And
right. Let's learn some.
yeah, so it's when you go and you're going to enter your password into a website. You should really be checking that that website is really what you think it is. And
Right.
it's all about phishing, which we've talked about before. And I know you probably know, but I'm going to give a quick refresh of that. A phishing website is just it's a fake website, but it looks so real that it tricks you into entering your username and password.
Oh,
And here's the thing, this is another reason why I hate passwords, because phishing is only possible because of the super simple nature of passwords. Because here's what's happening in this scenario is, just like in the physical world, authentication is only happening on one side,
one side. Right.
right? The website is checking that you entered the correct password before you get access to your account, but who's authenticating the website? Who's
Right.
checking that you're giving your password to the real website? And,
Right.
for most people, the answer is unfortunately nobody.
There needs to be somebody,
Yeah.
you
Yeah. Is
know?
that making sense so far?
Making total sense. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So that goes back to one of our questions, how, typing your password in manually makes you vulnerable to phishing.
Yeah.
Because when you're doing that, like if you are manually entering your password, that means you have to manually check that you're really on the website that you think you are.
Right. Right.
And what makes that even worse is if you do enter your password in to a phishing website, you may never realize that you did. I've helped people who had an account hacked and they rarely know how it happened. And I don't have any numbers, of course, on it, but given the general numbers of phishing that happens in the world, my
Mhm.
guess is that this is a common cause.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I would guess that.
So here's a quick plug for password managers, because if you have a password manager, it will automatically enter your password for you. But well, if you anyway, you can have it automatically enter, I should say. And if you do, then it's smart enough to only do it on the real website.
Yes.
And that's not perfect phishing protection, but it is one good layer.
Right.
Okay, so now it's time to answer the question you've been waiting for this whole time, Nick,
Yes.
which is, why did I pick that ridiculous title? So,
Ye-
yeah, as a reminder, do you remember what it is?
oh yeah.
Phishing protection, be specifically suspicious. And truthfully, in part, it's because I just really love alliteration. Uh, we got double P and then a double S. It just makes me laugh. But there is some seriousness to it. It's not just for humor. Part of the general advice that people hear, when it comes to online security, is be suspicious. And I've said
Right.
that, and I definitely agree with that. And
Right.
I'm sure I'll say it many more times. But anytime we can get specific, that's even more useful. And so, what I want our listeners to take from this episode is the idea of having an authentication mindset, not just accepting authentication of you, but be on the lookout for times when you need to do the authenticating. That's the way I want you to be specifically suspicious.
Yeah.
Basically, asking a form of the question, is this person, company, website really who they say they are?
Right.
Because our brain does better, like it's better to ask that really specific question than just say, be suspicious when you can. It's our brains are gonna, if we have a single clear question, that it's our brain's gonna activate better. And as we practice asking and answering that question in any situation, then your brain will naturally start asking in more places as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And okay, so I think that's all. I think we answered the questions. I have a call to action, but are there any?
We're
I know we're already here. It was fast today.
that was a quick one. That was a quick one.
Yeah,
Already to the call to action.
yeah. Well, and I'm hoping to, because we've definitely had some feedback that liked longer episodes, but also when we try to go deeper. And so that's kind of what I've been trying to shift focus to a little bit, is a little less, like breadth, less things to talk about, but trying to really dive deep into it and give examples and, you know, just really make it clear, uh, and just, kind of one idea each time. That's the hope. So hopefully that's what we managed today.
I like this idea. We're going to be a little more specific suspicious.
and get our tongues twisted up while we do it.
Right, and yeah, that is a bit of a tongue twister. All right, what's our call to action? What do you got for us today?
I want our listeners to work on developing a habit. Before you enter your password into any website, answer the question, is this the website I think it is? And answer that question by looking at the address bar. Either, well, a lot of times it's at the top, but sometimes it's at the bottom in your browser before you enter your password anywhere.
Yeah.
And at first, this might slow you down a little bit. And I know that internet addresses can look scary, especially when they're like really long. But here's a quick tip. If you see a really long one, it's just the first part that's important. And in a future episode, I will get actually a lot more specific so you can learn how to quickly identify just the important part of like the website identity.
Okay.
But I think even just building that habit of paying attention, it'll turn out that it's not as bad as you think it will be. So, but don't wait for that episode. Just start building that habit now. And this applies even for you, Nick, and our other people, because I know you're on a password manager, but
Yeah.
it still applies to you for a little bit different reasons, but there are good
Right.
reasons for you to develop that habit as well. And there you have it.
Okay. We're going to check the address bar.
Yep.
Okay. I can do that. I can do that.
Yeah.
I will get better at being suspicious.
Specifically suspicious. Yep, exactly.
There you go.
Okay. Appreciate your willingness to do it, man.
You betcha, buddy. There's our call to action, and that's our show, too. Okay, that's our super simple show today. If you're not a member of the IHP Academy already, please come join us for free. Stop searching the whole internet for answers and never knowing who to trust. Ask us instead. We made it super simple to find us, and it only takes 2 minutes to sign up. Just visit helpmegetsafe.com. Enter your name and your email. You're in. You can also find the link in our show notes. Thank you for joining us, and make it a great day. Bye-bye.